Hi, welcome to Netcode-Hub channel. I am Frederick, your lesson facilitator. Do you actually agree with me if I say Blazor, it is the future of web app development starting from next year, that is 2024? With the new features in .NET 8 Blazor, it will blow your mind. The features are many, but we're going to talk about one today, and that is the Blazor render mode. Please subscribe to this channel for more, and also you can click on the notification icon so you can receive notification as soon as I upload new video. You can like this video too to support this channel grow. If you are familiar with Blazor, you know that we have two hosting models in Blazor. That is the Blazor server, or the server side, and also the WebAssembly. If you are not familiar too, then Blazor used to support two hosting models, and that is what I have mentioned earlier, the Blazor server and the Blazor WebAssembly. Now, what is a Blazor server and what is a Blazor WebAssembly? Now, the server side uses WebSocket with SignalR connection, which communicates message or information between the server and the client. Now, here the client is what I'm talking about here. It is a browser. Also, all processes are done on the server and results are sent to the client so the client can just view. Now, when we talk about the WebAssembly, the processes are done on the client machine. Why do I say that? Because when a request is being made from the client to the server, all the application packages are sent to the client browser, and it is going to be there for data processing and etc. So in this case, it's going to make it very fast in processing, also fast in communication. Now, the new .NET 8 Blazor still has the same or these two models, but it has been upgraded up to 4. And also the name has changed from hosting models to render modes. What are they? Let's find out here, and that's going to be the objective of this video. We're going to talk about the render mode in this video. So by the end of watching this, you must be able to understand all the 4 render modes of .NET 8 Blazor, and also you're going to see an example with it. Okay, so let's create an application here so you can see the 4 types of render modes that I am talking about. So launch a Visual Studio, and this must be in the Visual Studio 2022. You must have .NET 8 framework installed, or that's the SDK installed. So let's say I have mine installed already. Now you can see we have this web app. Okay, so that's a new one, Blazor web app. You can see we have the standalone app, that's the WebAssembly. We have the server too available, but this time around we are going for this web app. Now let's give it a name here as Blazor render mode. So the render modes, you're going to talk about the first one, and that is the none. Now when you click on next, that is where we have all the render modes. Now these render modes, they are the interactivity type, how you want your application to get communicated with the client. You can see from here we have 4 modes here. The first one is none, we have server, we have WebAssembly, and we have this auto. This auto here comprises of the server and now the WebAssembly. Now if I choose none, what's going to happen? Let's click on OK. Let's get this account, or let's get this project created. We're going to run this project, then you're going to understand the interactivity type as none, what's going to happen or what's going to do to this application. Okay, so we have the project as you know already, and this is the project that we have as soon as you create a new one for Blazor. Now let's go to the components here, component folder. You can see we have layout and pages. Although there's a new slight bit of is it beautification, or it's not, it's organization, right? It has been organized into a different format. Check this. At first, the first one, we do not have this component folder. We only have the pages and the shared. Now here we've changed the shared to layout, and I will change the page still remains, right? And I will put these two folders into a folder, a mother or a parent component folder, over here. Okay, so if you want to find them, you come to this. Now, when you check this, we have some few changes here. The route here at first was the app.razor, and now for this app.razor was first the index or host if you're using Blazor server. I believe those who are familiar with will understand what I'm talking about. Okay, if you're new to, don't worry. This is the current one that we have for .NET 8 Blazor. Okay, now let's go to the pages, and now we are going to create a component here, and let's add a new Razor component, and the name of this is going to be render mode page. Okay, so we have this render mode page, and we're going to create another one, and this time around it's going to be a component. So here let's say display message, because you want to have a button and you wire this button to an event, right? So let's have something like, I'm going to have this div, or there's no even need. Let's have, come to this time round, and now in here you want to have, I want to just have public, or just let's make that private string, and that is the message here. Now this message is going to be string.empty. That is the initial one. Okay, let's have this private void, a method known as show message. As soon as this button is clicked, you want to set this message to hello. So this is customized message. All right, so we have this, and this is a message that we are talking about. So this variable that we are creating, we are assigning this value to this string as soon as this method is called. Now in here, let's use h2, and now let's call this message variable here to display the message that we have. Also, let's create a button, and on this button we have btn primary as a bootstrap class, and we say show message. And now this button, when it is clicked, we're going to wire it with on click event. So we call the show message method that we have created. So this is a method that we have created, and now when this button is clicked, we want to call this message. All right, let's save this. Let me close this and open it again. So display message component, yes, everything is set now. Now let's see, we have this. So this is a private void. Okay, so we must have this as a method. That's fine. Okay, so this, we are going to call this in this mode, this parent mode. So in here, let's have maybe h3 or h2. So this is the parent component. Okay, and let's show this show message component in here, right? And the name here, it is display message instead. So display message. All right, now we have this. So let's run this. Remember that the render mode here, it is none. So we have a button here. Now before we run, I want us to check something. We want to navigate to this page, nav menu, right? Now when you come to this render mode, let's set a page route. So at page, now the route here, it is let's make it as render. So render, that's fine. Okay, now we go back to this nav menu. Now you see we have this home and weather. Let's make a duplicate of one of these, and now in here we are going to navigate this to render. Okay, then we say render mode. Okay, now let's save this. Let's refresh this page so we can see the output of this. Remember that here we're going to talk about, we are talking about the interactive type or the render mode as none. While this page is loading, let me take time to explain this. Now, the first one, when you choose none, it is automatically or defaultly a static. Now this component is rendered as a plain HTML on the server side, and now it is being also sent to the browser. The component, it is not interactive, and it does not use Blazor server or WebAssembly. So it doesn't use any of the two models. It is also static. It means it is not interactive. Although we have a button, we've wired an event to that button, but as soon as you click on this button, nothing will show because there's no interactivity going on. That is a static one, or the none. So is this useful? Maybe that would be your next question, isn't it? Yes, it is. If you want to create a website or website, let me say website, because when you talk about web application, it must be a responsive. If you want to create a website for people, website at times they just display just a message and that's all. People go there to read, like blog and etc. You just go in there and read. Now, in doing so, you can just make it as a static because there's no interactivity going on. There won't be any buttons, there won't be any operations, login, or any other stuff for user to collect. It is just going there and now display. So you can use static, and it's very important in using that section or that render mode for that specific project. Now we have this render mode. As soon as I click on this render mode, you can see we have this button. So right click on this, go to inspect element. And now let me open this one. When you go to the network tab, check here. You can see we have this WS, it stands for WebSocket. Now let's see here, we have WASM. So let's first click on WebSocket and now click on this render mode. So you can see we are in here already. Now you can see nothing happens, right? Let's go to WASM and now click on it again. You can see nothing happens. Let's go to the home back. Now here, WebSocket, nothing happens. You can see we don't see any kind of data here. And let's also see WASM. So go back again. And now the WASM, click on this render mode. You can see still nothing happens here. If I click on this button, you can see nothing happens. The method is not called. If you want to check that, let's put a breakpoint to this method. Okay. So in case it's going to wide up, we're going to have this hit. Now let's go to the page here. And now let's try to click on this again. You can see nothing happens. The event or the bug that you put there is not what hit. It means that, as it said already, it is a static. So as you render, that is what you see. There's no communication. It is not an interactive between the client and the user. When you go to, let's check it up. Is it source? No, network. Then let's check something over here. So you can see we have this render here. Now let's go to this response. So you can see when you go to response, the page that we had from this index, that is the same page that has been rendered over here as a static file. So you can see we have a method known as show message, but where is the click event? There is no on-click event here. So although we have this button, but nothing is happening here. The same thing applies to the number of times that we click. You're going to repeat the same thing because there's no event wired up. There's no connection which is going to make that system work. So that is it for the static or the non-render mode. I believe this is clear. Okay, let's go to the next one, and that will be I don't want to talk about it. Let's get a project created, and let's check out the next render mode I'm going to talk about. So let's create a new project here. New project. And the same Blazor web app. And here, instead of the none, we're going to use as server. So that is the next hosting model. Is it hosting model now? The render mode. So the interactive type here, we're going to choose what? Server. Now let's click on get created. Now, when you choose server, what happens here is this server is going to create a connection, a WebSocket connection using Signal R, right? And now, when you do that, it's going to render all components that are going to create it. You're going to render, process everything from the server side, and now send the results to the client when a request is made. So let's see. So from the server side, all processes are done on the server, and I return a response to the client. Take note of this. That is what the render mode is about. So in here, we have the same thing, right? This is what I'm going to do. I can't just be typing, right? So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to just go to the component, to pages, and here I'll just grab the two components that we created together, I and U, right? And I'll paste them here. So we have this. Then I can just go back to the nav menu, and that's going to be for the layout. And now this layout, I can just grab this nav menu, and you go back to this layout, this nav menu. I can just remove it from this section. Yes, delete it. And now here, I'll just paste in that. Okay, so here instead of this, let me choose this to Blazor render mode. So here, talking about the server side, we have the same method here that's making a reference to that page. We have the page displayed added here, as you can see. We have this component, that's the display message component, also created and now injected. Okay, so let's put a breakpoint here. Now, in order for this to work, we have to enable this render mode on top. Okay, so there are several ways of enabling this render mode. The first one is enable this render mode on top of the page. So you can put it, so there's the render mode. You can put it here within that component. So you can specify the type of render mode that you want this component to render. Is it in a WebAssembly? Is it none? Is it or is it static? Or is it web? Or is it server? Or is it WebAssembly? Right. So let's see. If you want to put it here, you can just pass in at render mode. So you can see we have it at render mode. Then here you can specify it as render mode. So you can see we have them. Let's check it out. So at render mode. So let's see. We have this render mode. Okay. So we have render mode as. So render mode dot. Okay, so let's see server. You can see we have it here. So interactive server. So this is the first way to do this, right? So you can specify this here. Now you want to turn this component to render in the server form, meaning that all the processes must be happening on the server on the computer, and now only the result, the needed one, must be sent to the client browser for the client to see, right? So the client won't see everything. So he's going to see what he or she requested. Very simple. Now let's save this. Let's run this and now check it out. You make sure that you have a hit point or a breakpoint hit in that white event. That is when the button is clicked down here. So let's have a white event here. As soon as it clicked, it hits, it means that the interactivity it is moving on is activated. Okay. Once it's load, we are going to navigate to the inspect element, or you can just hit on the F12. And now in here, go to the network resources. So we have this loaded. So let's see, I'm going to click on this. Let's check what happens here. You can see if I click on the WebSocket, because you have nothing here. If I click on the WASM, nothing over here. Now the WebSocket, let's see, if I click on the render mode, you can see that here a WebSocket has been created. Check over here, the type here is WebSocket. Okay, so this WebSocket here creates a connection between the component and the application or the server. So the client component and now the server is going to have a connection together. So this is going to tie them together. Now if I click on show message, you can see this point is hit. Now click on continue on, and let's see, you can see we have hello, this is customized message displayed here. Now check this WASM. You can see it is not over here because here this is server app. So server app uses WebSocket. That's why we have WebSocket here identified. WASM, this is for WebAssembly. We haven't gotten there. When you get there, you're going to understand this as well. Okay. Now, when you go to, you can see we have this set over here. And when you go to this message, you can see we have all these over here. And that is the communication between the client, this browser, and now the server itself. So that is a way. Now, let's see, aside from putting this render mode on top here, is there any other way to specify the render mode? Yes, you can do that. Here, you can specify it as render. So at render mode, then you can have this server. Okay, so let's have an attribute first. I nearly forgot that. So at attribute, Then in here, we can have this render mode. You can see you have it here. So render mode, interactive server, right? So I'm just going to make a copy of this. So copy of this, then let me just comment one here. So Control KC, I'll comment that. Then I'm going to remove the render mode from this. And let's see. So if I save this, and let's also refresh the same page, and it's still going to work. So this is going to happen on the whole page. So any component that you specify or any component that is found within this render page here is going to be rendered as a server, right? But if you specify it here, you can decide to specify maybe component 1 going to have a render as server, component 2 going to have as render as WebAssembly. So you can see from here that it is also working. It's hit, and now it is also working. As you can see, it is also working over here. Now the last place here is to, if you want to customize for the entire application, maybe you want this to get rendered the server side here for the entire application. What can you do? You can specify this in the route dot is it Blazor? So let's set Control KC, and I'll go back to this solution. Now go to this app, right? So we have this head outlet and this route. So that's where we need to specify this render mode here. So let's see how to do that. So it is the same as typing in at render mode. At render mode. Then in here, you're going to do the same thing. So at render, and you can see we have this interactive server and etc. Let's see the render mode if it is correctly spelled. So we have render mode is equal to render mode dot. Okay, so render mode dot interactive server. I think so. Yeah, so you can see we have interactive server. We have it set over here, and you can just make a copy of this and now put it here. Now this means that if you talk about the auto, if you want to talk about the next one, that's the WebAssembly, any of the hosting model, if you want to specify it for the whole application, then you put it here. So when you put it here, any component that you're going to create or any page that you're going to create is going to use this server to render that. If you specify it on top of the page, it means all the component or that specific page is going to render as what? The specific model or the specific mode that you have rendered or put over there. Take note of that. Now when you save this and you run this, it's going to be the same. Okay, so I just want to introduce you to all types of tray, and for you to know which one that you can use based on the use case or what you want to do. So let's check this out. I click on render mode, so show message, and let's see if it is hit. Yes, it is. So click on continue, and you can see we have this message. So that is it. That is a way to specify it based on the page level, the component level, and also the application level. You've gone through that. Now let's see the next one. That's going to be the WebAssembly. That is the third render mode. You've seen the none, or that's the static one. You've seen the server, and also we are going to the WebAssembly. So I'm going to close this, and let's stop this. Okay. But before we do that, when you go to program.cs file, you can see there's some services and some maps set over here. Check this. You can see here we are adding interactive server component, and now the middleware pipeline we are also adding interactive server render mode. So here we add the render mode as a server, and now here we add this to have access to all the components in this folder. All right. Now with the WebAssembly, we're going to have the same thing, but this time around it is not going to be interactive server. It's going to be interactive WebAssembly. Take note. So let's get it done. So a new project, web app, and now in here you're going to say not server but rather assembly. So web assembly, and now here we're going to choose this WebAssembly. That is going to be the third one. Okay, so while this is created, we are going to make a copy of the component that we created in order to skip wasting some of the time. So we go to the component here, and for me, we have our nav menu, and now this nav menu, I'll just go to, you can see we have this project, we have the server and the client. Now every component that I'm going to use for this WebAssembly must be inside this client. Okay, now this WebAssembly, what it does here, it is this component that you're going to create here, they are rendered interactively on the client using the Blazor WebAssembly. So they are downloaded into the browser's storage, and now it is being run over there. When it does that, it increases the interactivity. There is no stoppage, or there's no relays or delays. No. Everything is working because the whole application is now inside the browser. So communication is flexible, and also it is so fast or faster than the web server. Okay, so let's see for this. Now we have these pages, so we go to these pages, and in here, let's have a look. We have this counter. Let's go to the server. So pages or the layout here, and on this nav menu, let's remove this nav menu. And now let's paste what we copied from the previous one. We have this nav menu. Now the same thing applies to the component. Let's have this component from the pages. So I'm going to copy the display message and now the render mode as well. And I'm going to paste them here to this pages. Okay. So that's where it must be. Make sure that they are in the client project so that these components can be downloaded into the client browser. Take note, don't put them here. Okay, so now we have this. When you go to program.cs file, you see it is having, go to the server. Yes, you can see it is having add interactive WebAssembly as indicated earlier. You can see we have it set over here as well. That's right. Now let's get it go. So we save this. And now let's run that. But before we run that, you go back to this render mode. And now here, we can specify it within this component or on the page here. So instead of making this render interactive server, you're going to say render interactive WebAssembly. I hope this is clear. Yes, so WebAssembly. Now let's save this. Let's run this. Alright, so you can see it is now open. Now right click, let's go to inspect element or hit on the F12 key. Now let's move this a little bit. Now go to network tab, and I can see we have this, the loaded file start array. Now if I click on, let's open the WebSocket for server. Let's click on this. You can see nothing happens here from the WebSocket, right? Let's click on WASM. And you can see the whole file here is being downloaded. Now you can see they are downloading it to the browser. As you can see from this, all these are files from the server which are downloading it to the application. Also, when you go to this console, check what happened here. You can see you click on this, the file is also loaded, and the size here is 8.49 megabyte resources from the network, and these are the files that you also have here. So you can see that the server here uses the WebSocket, and the WebAssembly uses what the WASM. Take note, right? Now, if I click on show message, you see it has popped up over here. So this means that using the WebAssembly, all the resources are going to be downloaded and stored on the client browser so that it can increase fast communication. All right. So here, even when the connection to the server gets cut, it still has the data in the application or in the browser. It can still communicate with the application as well. So that is the WebAssembly. Now, if we check this, we can also specify this at the top page level. That is inside this app level. Or you can specify this. You can specify it here. You can see we have this app. You can specify the render mode here. You can specify it alongside with this page or the component level or the page level. Any of them, it works. I hope this is clear. Thank you. Now, the last one here is the auto. Auto means automatic. It is a combination of the server and the WebAssembly. Now, you know that the server uses WebSocket for communication, and it loads faster because as soon as the page opens, what the specific content that the user requested is going to be processed and now sent it to the browser. Okay. So while it is doing that, the background loads the application or download all the resources and now stored. So while the server it is sending what the user needs, in the background, the WebAssembly also downloads all the components and store it to the client browser. But in that case, the client doesn't see But the next time the client refreshes the application, it's going to now rely on the web assembly, because by then it might have finished downloading all the resources from the server and store. So it's going to now move to the web assembly, and I'll use the web assembly for communication instead of using the web server. I hope this is clear. So we can say that with the auto, component is rendered interactively on the server first. Then it switches to the Blazor WebAssembly on a subsequent visit after the Blazor bundle is downloaded from the server onto the client browser. So this mode provides faster initial load and ungraceful fallback. So this is what I prefer, the auto. So I can just switch to anyone that I want at any time. Let's have a look with that with an example here. So we're going to create a folder, a new project. And now in here, you're going to install Blazor app. I'll give it a name as not as server, as auto. Okay. Now with the interactive type, we choose this auto, that's the server and now the WebAssembly. So click on create. And now that's what I'm going to do. We go back to the WebAssembly. And now we're going to copy all the files that we made to this. So WebAssembly, I open the folder here. So I'll first grab the nav menu. And this nav menu is going to happen in the server component layout. Nav menu, remove this one, and I replace the new one that we created earlier on for this tutorial. Also, with the client section, the components page, I'm going to copy the two components that we created in the first section, and I'm going to paste it down here. So go to the client, and from the pages, we have the two files, our display counter and our render modes. I'm going to grab them like this, come to the pages here, and I'll paste them as you see here. Now, when you go back to this render mode, instead of this, we're going to specify it as render auto. Okay, so render auto. Now that is it. That's all thing we need to do. When you check the program.cs file from the server side, you can see that it is now adding the server is adding only one over here, but the auto is going to add the server and the WebAssembly. The server and the WebAssembly. So that's an auto. So it's going to fall back on any. The first one you're going to initialize, it is a server. After resources being downloaded, then it falls back to the WebAssembly. Isn't that beautiful? Yes. Now let's see. So after saving this, let's run this application and see. Okay, so now let's see. Let's open developer tool F12 on the key to get it. All right, click and go to inspect element. You're also going to have it. Now go to the network tab. Now take note. When you first check the console, you can see that, let's see what we have here. All right, you have nothing over here as you can see. Let's go back to the network tab here, and we have the star loaded as you can see from here. That's the default one. When you check this WASM, WebSocket, nothing happened. WASM, nothing over here, right? Now, but let's click on this render mode and see. As soon as I click on render mode, see what happens. We are in here, but you can see from the WASM, you can see it is downloading. It is downloading. By this downloading, what we're talking about here, it is not as been displayed over here. This is coming as a result of this WebSocket. So network, you go to this WS WebSocket, and you can see we have a WebSocket clicked over here, and that's what we're talking about. Okay, so you can see we have pending. Now, as soon as I click this, it's going to display. So it's using the current one is using the WebSocket. But if I reload this page again, then it's going to fall back to this WASM. And hereby, this guy here is going to take in charge and now do all stuff that we need to do with it. Because by this time around, all the resources have now been downloaded into the client machine. You see? So that is what it is using now. So it is now going to use this WASM. So this I'm going to do, let me go to this and I'll clear everything. So let's clear the browser cookie. So everything, let's clear all things from this browser data so we can test it again and see what we are actually talking about. Okay. So initially it's going to load the first time. Now let's see. So Okay, so click on this. Okay, now if I refresh this, let's see what happened. We have this set, display this is working, and now with WASM, you can see all the data has been loaded, and now anytime that I click on next one again, it's going to fall on the WASM for that communication. It's going to fall here for this communication. Although you do not actually see that the process is coming from this, but that is what it does. Okay. Wow. So that is what I'm talking about. And now if I say that Blazor, it is a feature of web development, I believe you're now good with me, isn't it? Yes. So that is it. I'll be making videos on these features and also starting some projects, some easy projects with this Blazor.net 8. So if you want to have all these projects also watch, please click on this like button and also subscribe to the channel so you can have more. So here, I believe we've achieved our objectives, isn't it? You've seen the 4 modes, the static, you've seen the server side, we've seen WebAssembly, we've seen also the auto. You've seen what each means and now what each does. Thank you so much for watching this video. Take care of yourself. And I'm going to catch you up in the next video.